Bound 26 unfolds as a tightly wound narrative that, beneath its crime thriller surface, becomes a deeply resonant meditation on longing, recognition, and the fragile courage required for women, especially queer women, to claim emotional truth in environments structured to deny it. And the dynamic between Corky and Violet can be understood less as a sensational partnership and more as a gradual, searching process of mutual recognition that challenges the rigid confines of the world around them. Beginning with Corky's arrival as an outsider whose past and profession mark her as someone accustomed to navigating systems that confine and define, yet who carries a quiet steadiness that contrasts with the volatility of the space she enters. And Violet's presence in that space is immediately defined by contradiction, as she inhabits a role that appears polished and controlled, yet is undercut by an undercurrent of dissatisfaction and emotional isolation that becomes increasingly visible as the narrative progresses, and their initial interactions, though framed by proximity and circumstance, take on a deeper significance when viewed through a queer lens that prioritizes interiority over spectacle, because what emerges between them is not simply attraction but a recognition of shared constraint. A sense that both are living within structures that demand performance and silence rather than authenticity. And this recognition manifests not in overt declarations, but in small shifts of attention, in the way they observe and respond to one another with a level of care that suggests an unspoken understanding. And for many queer women, this dynamic reflects a familiar pattern in which emotional intensity is first articulated through forms that can be socially justified: curiosity, admiration, even mentorship, before it can be safely acknowledged as something more. And Violet's growing openness with Corky, particularly in moments where she reveals the instability and danger of her relationship with Caesar, signals a movement toward trust that is as much about self-recognition as it is about connection, because in speaking her truth to another woman who listens without judgment, she begins to see her own desires and dissatisfaction more clearly, and Corky, in turn, responds not with dominance or rescue, but with a grounded presence that affirms Violet's agency, creating a dynamic that resists the more familiar narratives of control and instead emphasizes mutual respect and collaboration. And this becomes especially significant when they begin to imagine a future beyond their current circumstances, as the plan to take the money is not merely a plot device, but a symbolic act of reclaiming autonomy, a way of asserting that their lives need not remain bound to the expectations and limitations imposed upon them. And yet the tension of the narrative lies in the fact that this vision of escape must be negotiated within a world that is actively hostile to such transformation. A world represented by Caesar and the broader criminal network, which operates through surveillance, suspicion, and control. And in this context, the relationship between Corky and Violet becomes a site of resistance, not because it is overtly confrontational, but because it insists on the validity of their emotional reality in a space that seeks to erase or exploit it. And this insistence is reflected in the careful way they navigate their interactions, balancing vulnerability with caution, openness with restraint, in a manner that mirrors the lived experiences of many queer women who must constantly assess the risks of being seen and known. And the film's portrayal of this negotiation is particularly compelling because it does not frame their connection as inherently transgressive or taboo, but rather as something deeply human and necessary. A source of strength that enables them to imagine and pursue a different life. And this stands in contrast to cultural tendencies that either ignore or sensationalize relationships between women, reducing them to spectacle rather than acknowledging their complexity and significance. And by focusing on the emotional stakes of their partnership, the narrative challenges these tendencies and offers a more nuanced representation that resonates with viewers who have experienced similar processes of self-discovery and connection. And the tension that arises as their plan unfolds further underscores the precariousness of this journey, as the threat of exposure and violence looms over every decision, reinforcing the idea that the path to authenticity is often fraught with danger, particularly for those whose identities and desires fall outside societal norms. And Caesar's increasing suspicion and eventual confrontation with Corky and Violet can be read not only as a plot escalation, but as a manifestation of the forces that seek to control and suppress women's autonomy, especially when it intersects with non-conforming expressions of identity and relationship. And in this sense, his actions represent a broader cultural discomfort with women asserting independence and forming bonds that do not center male authority, a discomfort that persists in various forms and continues to shape the ways in which women navigate their lives and relationships. And the resilience demonstrated by Corky and Violet in the face of this threat highlights the importance of solidarity and mutual support, as they rely on each other not only for practical survival but for the affirmation of their shared vision. And this reliance is built on a foundation of trust that has been carefully developed through their interactions, making their partnership feel earned and authentic rather than contrived. And for queer audiences, this authenticity is particularly meaningful, as it reflects the ways in which relationships between women often develop through a process of gradual revelation and mutual understanding, shaped by the need to navigate external pressure, while remaining true to one's internal sense of self. And the film's refusal to reduce this process to a simplistic or purely physical dynamic allows for a richer exploration of the emotional landscape that defines their connection, emphasizing the importance of communication, empathy, and shared purpose. And this emphasis extends to the resolution of the narrative, where the culmination of their efforts is not framed as a triumphant conquest, but as a hard-won opportunity for a new beginning, one that carries with it both hope and uncertainty. And the image of them leaving together suggests a future that is not predetermined, but open to possibility, grounded in the knowledge that they have chosen to align their lives in pursuit of authenticity and mutual care. And this choice is perhaps the most significant aspect of the story, as it underscores the idea that becoming visible to oneself and to others is an ongoing process, one that requires courage, vulnerability, and the willingness to challenge the structures that seek to define and limit us. And in this way, Bound can be understood as more than a genre film, functioning instead as a cultural text that engages with questions of identity, connection, and resistance, offering a perspective that centers women's experiences and highlights the quiet resilience that underpins their relationships. And by doing so, it contributes to a broader conversation about the importance of representation and the need for narratives that reflect the diversity and complexity of women's lives, particularly those whose stories have historically been marginalized or misunderstood. And its enduring impact lies in its ability to resonate with viewers who see in Corky and Violet not only a compelling partnership, but a reflection of their own journeys towards self-recognition and connection, journeys that continue to unfold in a world that is still learning how to acknowledge and honor the full spectrum of women's love for one another.